Why do the religious never understand that empty claims in your own pathetic fifis don't actually prove anything? Why don't they know what words mean? Because Daniel King certainly doesn't, and I wouldn't be holding my breath for any of the others. It's all a scam all the way down. Because, what else is new? We're back again today with Daniel King for video number 8, proving that he's just a fool. He's not going to get it, of course, because he's just not that smart, but sometimes you just have to hold your nose and dive right into the religious mire. Here we get his supposed argument from "look at the trees," because that's always useful. At least the religious seem to think so because they're not that bright. So let's get this one over with, and away we go.
The universe is proof God is real. If you want to know if God exists, just look up into the sky. The existence of the stars points to the existence of a great creator.
Yeah, no it doesn't. This is very, very common, often referred to as the, look at the trees argument, but it doesn't actually get you anywhere. And I'm going to explain why up front, and then we can watch him make every single mistake that's possible to make. I'm just assuming, of course, because I haven't seen the video, but this is Daniel King and, he's just not that bright. So here's why this argument fails. Let's speak in very general terms because it's a lot easier that way. The existence of a thing cannot be used as evidence for another thing if there is no direct, demonstrable, verifiable link between the two. You can't just say, there's a jacket in the closet, therefore that proves leprechauns are real, because it proves absolutely nothing of the sort. It only proves that you're a moron. In order to show that X caused Y, you need to show that both X and Y are real, and demonstrably so, and that there is a verifiable causal link between X and Y. Otherwise, you're just making a complete fool of yourself. Your beliefs don't matter. Your feelings don't matter. Only actual, verifiable evidence does, and King, as I'm sure we all know, he doesn't have any of that. But let's let him feel important, shall we?
In ancient times, man tried to number the stars. And then with the invention of the telescope, galaxies composed of numerous stars were discovered. Then in 1900, scientists estimated that there were 100,000 galaxies. As telescopes became more powerful, the sheer size of the universe became more evident. Now, using the Hubble telescope, we can see over 50 billion galaxies from Earth.
That's a very outdated number. Now, you have to remember that this video hasn't been out there all that long. Under a year, actually, although it'll be getting pretty close to that by the time this airs. But the actual number is closer to 125 billion galaxies, and it's been that for quite some time. That means that King didn't bother to do any kind of simple Google searches before he made his video. He just yanked something out of his butthole, and that's hardly a surprise. The thing is, though, that doesn't really matter. It doesn't prove that there is a God. This is just the standard, I don't get it, therefore God nonsense that the religious have been pulling forever. Your ignorance doesn't mean your God done it. That's not how this works. In order to demonstrate your God, and you have to prove your God is real first, using direct and demonstrable evidence that shows that your God actually exists, and you have nothing like that to present, you can no more say that the universe exists, therefore God, than you can say the universe exists, therefore the flying spaghetti monster. Because those are the exact same thing, and they are getting it wrong for exactly the same reason. Your assertions don't mean anything without corroboratory evidence to back it up. I suggest you go find some.
With even the smallest galaxy containing more than 10 billion stars, the vastness of the cosmos becomes staggering. It was from this, the order of the motion of the stars in all things, that Plato, back in 427 BC, argued for the existence of God.
That doesn't mean that any gods exist. The problem that they're having is the fact that they just assume that God answers all questions. They don't like not knowing, therefore, they just stuff God into any question they can't immediately come up with an emotionally satisfying answer for. That's the very basis of the God of the Gaps argument, where whenever there's a gap in your knowledge, they'll just want to try to fill it with God. God is just a placeholder for their own ignorance, as I've said before. The problem is that once they find actual answers, they are so emotionally attached to their placeholder that they will refuse to set that aside and accept the reality, instead pretending that reality can't be right because it just makes them feel bad. Well, who cares about that? Other than you, I mean. Your feelings don't actually mean anything. This is why we still have creationists and anti-science theists, because they'd much rather think that they're special, the magical creations of a magical man in the sky, than to accept the only explanation for which we have any evidence, that we all evolved and we really aren't that special. He'd much rather believe in God than deal with demonstrable knowledge, and that's what makes people like Daniel King such a ludicrous joke.
In a surviving fragment of one of his works, Aristotle, in around 322 BC, he argued that when the night had darkened the lands and people should behold the whole of the sky spangled and adorned with stars, and when they should see the changing lights of the moon as it waxes and wanes, and the risings and settings of all these celestial bodies, their courses fixed and changeless throughout eternity, when they should behold all these things, most certainly would they have judged both that there exist gods and that all these marvelous works are the handiworks of the gods.
And that just proves how little Aristotle knew, since most of that is just wrong. And this brings us back to something that I've brought up before, that the religious tend to be really impressed with the thinkers of the distant past because they're incapable of moving on with the rest of reality. It's why they're still talking about Anselm and Augustine and Aquinas, the three big A's of Christianity, because they're still stuck in the 13th century. They've missed out on all of the developments ever since because they just don't care. They want to believe what makes them happy to believe, whether any of it is demonstrably true or not, and they just reject the facts that show that they're wrong because the facts to them just don't matter. Every single time that you hear them bringing up long dead theologians, you know that they've got nothing better to offer. That just proves how archaic Christianity actually is, and how little it's changed since the early days. And that's nothing that you ought to be proud of.
The Roman orator and statesman Cicero, back around 43 BC, wrote, "What could be more clear or obvious when we look up to the sky and contemplate the heavens, that there is some divinity of superior intelligence?"
And he's still proving that he's living in the Dark Ages, or before that maybe, whatever. You don't see science doing that. You know who brings up Darwin continuously? Creationists. It isn't modern evolutionary biologists, because they've all moved on far beyond Darwin. Christians should have moved on beyond the old guys in togas, but they haven't. They're still embracing the ignorance of the distant past. Maybe they ought to knock that off. I don't know, but just a helpful hint. Anyway, I'm going to skip over all of the quotes because they don't actually mean anything. What anyone believes is irrelevant. It's all down to what they can prove. So, chipmunk time.
Abraham Lincoln said, I never behold the heavens filled with stars, that I do not feel I am looking in the face of God. I can see how it might be possible for a man to look down upon the earth and to be an atheist. I cannot see how he could look up into the heavens and say, there is no God. More important than the words of Plato, Aristotle, Cicero, or Lincoln, the psalmist of the Bible wrote,
Oh, crap. I don't care what it says in your big book of multiple choice either. Honestly, is this all he's going to do for this entire video? How about some evidence? You know, that stuff you can prove is actually real. How about some of that? Of course, he won't because he can't, which is why this entire series is such a ridiculous load of nonsense. And again, we have to ask who he's making these videos for. It certainly isn't for atheists because we're just going to laugh at the incompetence of it all. Theists aren't going to need any proof for God because they already believe on faith. So King is going to do what all apologists do. He's going to play make-believe and pretend that he's actually doing anything useful. He's going to aim his videos at existing Christians who are just going to gobble it all up and then feel good that God has been proven, while pretending that he's making the videos for atheists who are just going to laugh. And once again, this video has gotten absolutely no traction at all. 29 views for a video published on January 9th, 2022, when, if we go by that 14% metric, he should have 14% of his subscribers watching his videos, and that ought to be 323 views. I'm probably going to have more than that on the very first day of this video, so Daniel King is a joke.
That the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Day after day, other speech, and night after night reveals knowledge. When I consider the heavens, and the psalm says, and the work of your hands, the moon and the stars which you have ordained. The existence of God is obvious.
Not to anybody with a brain. That's why, at the time that I'm writing this at least, King's video has 1 upvote and 4 downvotes. He's got 2 comments, both from atheists, and while King does respond to both of them, and I give him credit for that, he didn't actually answer any of their objections. Instead, he just made excuses, as he always does, and never once provided any evidence for anything he has to say. This is just a pile of empty claims because he's not talking to us. He's not competent enough to talk to us. He's just making a complete fool of himself.
The Apostle Paul uses the same argument in Romans 1:20. He writes,
Still don't care. This is just using faith to justify faith, and it doesn't work that way. Here's where you ought to be convinced that this is just a con to bring in the money from the believers, because no atheist gives a crap what it says in the Bible. So we're going to fast forward some more until he gets to something coherent, and for that, I fear it might mean going to the very end of the video. That might be all we get, so let's get to it.
For since the creation of the world, God's invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power in Godhead, so that people are without excuse. In other words, the existence of creation leaves us with no excuse for not believing in a creator.
Well, that's your claim, but that's really all that it is. Which creator and how do you know? That's a good question that he won't have any kind of coherent answer to, right? This is why he's such a joke, and he's not alone. I'm going to be fair. They're all this bad. But we really have to call a spade and stop pussyfooting around these people's stupidity. It's not just King, although King is pretty bad. All apologists are like this because all of them are doing the exact same thing. Appeal to what you already believe in and pretend that that makes it true. It's wildly circular. It says a thing in a book I like. Therefore, that proves that everything I believe is true, including the book, because I like it. Somehow, these people just can't figure out where they're going wrong on that one. I don't know why, but it's not exactly a surprise either.
I like what Ralph Waldo Emerson said. All I have seen teaches me to trust the Creator for all I have not seen.
Oh look, more quotes from people who just don't matter. What the hell is wrong with this jackass? Does he not actually understand what proof is? He's got this gigantic 50-plus part series on proofs for God, and he has no clue what the word actually means. So let's educate him, even though he won't care. This is going to be my good deed for the day. Proof is evidence or argument establishing or helping to establish a fact or the truth of a proposition. He's got absolutely none of that at all. This video is all, here's what somebody in the distant past said, with no evidence at all in support of it. There isn't even an argument here. This is just an empty claim based on his own blind faith in an ancient book of mythology and his own wishful thinking. This just makes him a dumbass. I hope that doesn't surprise anybody.
Like so many before me, when I gaze up to the heavens on a dark night and behold the star-filled skies, I say to myself, yes, God is there.
And that just means you're a dumbass like all the other clueless wonders before you. Stop being stupid. It's not becoming. Anyway, that looks like this is going to be another shorter video, which is fine because the next one might be another two-parter. That is, if it's not as vapid as this one was, then I might just be able to squeeze it all into one with a lot of fast forwarding. After this, he just tries to shill for his con, which, since nobody's actually watching his videos, I'm sure he's not getting anything out of that. And that's a good thing, because the less money these shysters make, the less impact they're ever going to have, and Daniel King is really terrible at his job. For a guy who actually has a church and puts out a decent amount of content, he's utter crap at actually producing anything worthwhile. So anyhow, what do you think? I'll ask again because I do from time to time, but how much longer do you really want to go on with this? Because I don't see it getting any better, and this is really like kicking a puppy at this point. Well, kicking a rock with a steel-toed boot, because the chances of him actually getting anything through his head are minimal at best. I'll keep going as long as people are willing to keep watching, and keep in mind, by the time you see this, I've already got a couple more of these in the pipeline, so you're stuck for at least a little while longer. But again, let me know your thoughts. Has Daniel ever made a good point in his life? Let's talk about it, or laugh about it, whatever. So until next time, never ever let the religious slip their idiocy past you. Hammer them on their moronic claims every single time that they fly past. It's the only way to teach anybody anything, even if they're not likely to learn. Because that's just kind of sad, right?